Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is going to include a chat about me and YouTube. I'll elaborate. It's all geared up to the fact that I don't actually do this just for fun. There is actually a purpose, and therefore I have to fine tune. A little bit of news on the house, but there's very little to say, apart from the fact it's nearly all finished, which is wonderful. And then, the rest of today, now sit down, take it easy, make sure you're comfortable. I don't want anybody going into shock, but I'm going to talk about and look at all my Phalaenopsis. Shock horror. Anyway, let's get going. Okay, what's that strange noise? It's actually rain, and it's now been doing it for about an hour, but there's not a lot of it. To do any real good after virtually a dry April, virtually all of April has been dry, it's been pretty bad. Our native orchids are starting to keel over before they've set seed, because they can't grow. A lot of them haven't even opened their blooms properly. It's just been so dry. And we've had some quite warm sunshine as well. Anyway, we're having some rain now. At this rate of rain, it would need to stay there for about 2 days to do any good, which it probably isn't going to do. I can tell it's not raining that hard because it's been raining some, probably a couple of hours now, and underneath my maple tree is still dry. So it hasn't even put enough water on that tree to drip through. That's how little it is. But it'll refresh everything. It'll sort of wash the dust off the leaves and things, but it's not going to water much, that's for sure. But at least we got some. I didn't even expect it, so that's that. Right, the house. We got a notification. Our actual conveyancer, the one, is actually off on holiday and comes back after what is now an extended bank holiday. Because these people always add an extra day on. You know, the world and their aunties and uncles in the UK get a bank holiday Monday. Well, they decide to take the Friday and the Tuesday off as well. So she's not coming back till Wednesday. But at least with this one, there's a stand-in. There's somebody who deals with that person's affairs while they're away. So we were contacted and said that the buyers would like to complete next Friday. Yeah? I forget what the date is, 6th I think it is. Anyway, next Friday, would I be okay with that? And I said, yes, I will be fine. And I asked if there's anything else I need to do, is there anything I need to do on the day, and all that sort of stuff, and I got an answer back from all that. But unfortunately, I assumed, as a consequence of us both agreeing a completion date, that they'd actually exchanged contracts when they haven't. They can't because my conveyancer's on holiday. However, as there is little or nothing to do after the exchange in our case, because there's no chain, the people buying haven't sold anything, I'm not buying anything, so there's nothing actually to do apart from take the money out of one lot and put it in the other lot. That's all it needs to do. So we may get away with it, but I think when the conveyancer comes back, that date may need to be changed. She's not coming back until Wednesday, But we shall see. If it isn't this Friday, it will be very, very soon after. It really will. I think we might just make it for the Friday if she comes back and gets her act together on our case and doesn't flap around with lots of other people's stuff, being totally selfish, of course. Well, we've waited long enough, So hopefully that will then be over and done with. All I've got left to do after that, once that completion date is done, then we no longer own that property. So all of the utility services and that can be contacted to get a refund for anything we're owed that we've paid in advance. So I'll have to deal with that. Once that's dealt with, all the money will be in my account and we can then distribute it, everybody happy, and I can delete about 40,000 emails, archive a load of folders off of my flipping desktop, and forget the whole thing forevermore. Right, YouTube. like I said in the introduction, I do this for fun, but, there's always a but, isn't there? Roger does buts. The but is that when I had to move out the other place, I had a major decision to make. Do I try and live off of my finances as they are, or do I go over the top and spend more money than I can afford, dipping into my inheritance money to live on until it runs out? I made that decision, which is why I bought the place with the big conservatory at great expense. So I'm currently spending more than is coming in by quite a bit, and as a consequence I set up the Patreon site and asked people to help support the channel to keep this going. The alternative would have been downsize this dramatically and grow a few orchids in the house. It wouldn't have been the same channel, would it? It would have been dramatically different. So those people have helped me achieve keeping this lot going, yeah? Which is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And another big thank you for those people. I mean, that goes along with the people who watch the videos. You know, the views are important, the people who subscribe, that's important. It all helps YouTube see the channel in a good way and help me promote it. But so YouTube has a purpose, yeah? It allows me to let you see my orchids, let me talk about them, film some shows, all that sort of stuff. And it earns me some money. Now, YouTube is having a few problems at the moment because there's quite a few people that are getting fed up with their charges, the amount they take. And some people are trying to find alternatives. Unfortunately, the alternatives, that they might not take as much money away from you, but they don't give you as much either. They haven't got the audience. It's as simple as that. YouTube is the biggest. For videos, it's the biggest audience there is and probably ever will be. Because it's had so many years to develop to the way it is, somebody starting from scratch would never get anywhere near it, and YouTube's always advancing, it's moving forward, so the catch-up would be impossible. So it is the place to be if you want to earn some money. And some people earn ridiculous amounts. Some people have become millionaires as a consequence of YouTube videos. But our humble orchid channels, our community of orchid channels that are a collective, it's not just one channel, we do link together sometimes. What I've got to do is maximise that without it becoming too obvious, if you see what I mean, even though this is making it obvious. So what I've done is I've spent some of yesterday, when there was a gap in the snooker, so I've got a bite to eat, glass of wine, and I thought I'm going to look through my videos over the last year and find out what works and what doesn't. The idea being we'll do more of what works and we'll do less of what doesn't. And you're not going to like some of the ones that don't. The ones that work the best are the ones you're watching now. The Sunday chats are by far my highest views. They are weekly, they're once a week. Some people might say, well, why don't you just do that one then and take 6 days off? I like doing the videos. It's not just, you know, to earn an income, although that is important. So those are singularly, by far, the ones that get the most views in, and therefore YouTube sees those as important. Then there are oddities. There are ones that suddenly do well. A visit to Burnham's, that will rock it, because it happens so rarely, you know. But then some of the other show videos that I do don't take off. A couple do and a couple don't. So they're sort of in between, but I would never stop doing those, because if I go to a show, I'm reporting back from that show, and that's a video. If lots of people don't want to watch it, that's fair enough, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then we get down to the ones you're not going to like. Care collabs, for me, are a miserable failure, I'm afraid to say. They get probably the least number of views of my orchid videos. We've got some others to talk about in a minute. So they're not good for me. They don't do me a lot of good. But that's being selfish. The reason for the care collabs is a collective. It's to get lots of people growing in different environments to say how they look after a particular orchid or a set of orchids. And the idea being, by using the hashtags, it allows new people or people on a search for deciding to grow a different genus or something to find those videos quickly, because they'll come up on the Google searches, and others probably. So that's another one. See, there's quite a few browsers, there's quite a few search engines, but Google have collared the market. Yeah, they've just grown beyond all sense of proportion. You know, they're listening to me now, I suspect. You know, they can't see through the roof, but I suspect there's a thermal imaging satellite up there linked up to Google, and they're probably monitoring your phone as well. I think I'm joking there. Anyway, so there are some videos that don't do very well for me. On my orchid channel, my bonsai videos don't do very well. That's understandable, isn't it? Yeah. But I have started up the new bonsai channel so that I now won't do any bonsai videos on my orchid channel. That will please enough people to make it worthwhile. And those on the orchid channel that have been interested in the bonsai channel, you now go over and subscribe and set notifications on the new bonsai channel so that you don't miss out, because, you know, it's a separate place now. You're not getting any more on the orchid channel. And the link to that's in the description, or if you just get on YouTube and search for Rogers Orchids, capital R, apostrophe S, capital O, you'll find it. And then you can get to the channel name and hit that ding dong, hit the old bell and subscribe. I'm up to about 440 subscribers on that bonsai channel now, which in the time it's been running is pretty good going. I'm quite pleased with that. And YouTube gives me, I've got a little banner on that channel that I don't have on my orchid one, probably because it's been going so long, and it tells me about little achievements, like, you know, you've had 3,000 views, you know, I got a cup, a little picture of a cup, you've got 300 subscribers, well, let's get that up to 500 and get a gold cup instead of a silver one. I don't know what's coming next, and it keeps an eye on my views, but to get that channel to the point of monetization is, I won't say it's impossible, but I may not live long enough, let's put it that way. The problem being, I need 4,000 watch hours. YouTube have been very clever there. I'm not knocking it, I'm just saying they've been very clever. So it's nothing to do with views, nothing to do with subscribers anymore, it's about the watch hours. That's what YouTube need to get the adverts in front of our noses. Yeah? They need people to be on YouTube. So to be a subscribed unit now, a monetized unit now, you need 1,000 subscribers. Well, some people can, you know, their channel will just rocket, and they'll get that in no time at all, but they may not get those watch hours. Yeah? So that's, you know, I'll just have to patiently wait and hope. One day maybe we'll get there, who knows. So that's that. Yeah. So my YouTube Orchid channel has much more popular videos than some, so it would pay for me to do more of those that are popular and less of those that aren't. And I will be doing that. You probably won't see the join, but I've also noticed sometimes I'll do what used to be a kitchen time, which is now a tray time. Not quite as obvious, but then kitchen time wasn't exactly obviously an orchid video, was it? And that's the next thing. Titles. Titles need to be about orchids plus what's in there. Orchids, big letters, and what's in there. Not just what's in there. Kitchen time. Repotting so-and-so. And that so-and-so could be like a species. Well, a lot of people have never heard of that. So that's a useless title for search purposes unless somebody wanted to find that exact orchid. And kitchen time means nothing. So I've got to watch my titles and be a bit cleverer. So orchids is a big word. Blooms is a big word. Repotting's not such a big word. Mounting, not such a big word. So I'll be fine-tuning titles. And hopefully they'll be more meaningful and get people in. And the biggest change I've already made, well, it's complicated, is the links at the end of the video. Like I've said, there will be links on the end of this video to take you into more of my videos. And that's what YouTube likes a lot. The trouble is, you know what I'm like, I walk out in here, point the camera, start waffling and turn it off again. That's not called planning, that's called point and click sort of thing. And without the planning, it's difficult to link another video in because it hasn't been thought of in advance. And that thinking in advance is something I've just got to do. It's got to get in there, start doing it, because it's important. And I've noticed in my stats that it's working, so it is important. So there we go. That's enough waffling about that sort of stuff. But like I say, you know, my YouTube and growing my orchids is my hobby. It's fun, I enjoy it all. But there is an ulterior motive with the YouTube channel. It earns me money to enable me to keep this hobby going. So it's important for that channel to grow. And you're the people that can help. But so can I, by doing some of these things I've just been talking about. Right. And what you've all been waiting for, the Phalaenopsis bit. Let's go with that then. Okay, these are they, motley looking crew. As I say, I don't profess to be an expert on Phalaenopsis, and strictly speaking, most of these are only here as a project, not because I actually wanted to start growing them specifically. But yeah, Phalaenopsis. These are not good for growing in my grow room because of the cold winter night temperatures, which just basically slow them or grind them down to a halt, and some of them object. So I've got them on the kitchen windowsill, so they're in the house. So these are grown indoors apart from one, the mounted one. Now the history behind these, this is a little mini that nearly got thrown out until it decided to sort of show some signs of life. Let me just get it out. So we've actually got some root signs in the pot, well, one, but we have got some root activity near the base, and hopefully at least one of those will go down in the pot. Manky markings on the leaves, unknown why. Newer leaves a bit better, and another new leaf starting now for this season. And what we've got on this one is a little plantlet coming out from the base. Not strictly speaking a keiki, not on a Phalaenopsis. It's a side shoot. Probably got many names. The only reason I'm keeping this is that the blooms are quite attractive, and it's not in the way. It sits on the end of the kitchen windowsill. And hopefully it's going to pick up. It's going to start growing a bit better. That would be good. Anyway, that's that little one. Put that one to one side. Now, when I started the store-bought Phalaenopsis project, I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. It's the whole project, so it's a playlist of about 20 videos. They're not all long ones, but they basically start from the plants as I bought them home from the shop, looking over them, getting them out their pots, repotting them. I think they may have been repotted again since then. It's the history of those store-bought orchids. Now, when I first bought them, I bought 3. Now, one didn't make it. I can't even remember why, but it's probably in the videos. But one didn't make it, and 2 did. And when I repotted them, one of them became 2 because it was 2 plants in the pot and they weren't joined, so I potted them separately. So those 2 became 3. And then, how long ago? Not that long ago, compared with the others anyway. I went to Burnham's, and I can't go to visit Sarah at Burnham's and walk out empty-handed. It's just not on. So I had to buy something, and I bought another Phalaenopsis, the idea being I'd add it to the project, stick it on the kitchen windowsill with the others. So that's the history of how these 4 came about. So, right. This one has just had a tragedy, quite a tragedy, because if you look carefully at the spike, those 2 blooms, one of them's not complete, and this side did have 2 and now it's only got 1. Now what happened was I was cooking my steak for tea As one does now and again. I don't do it often, I must admit. I try and avoid too much red meat, but I'm not cutting it out. I like a steak now and again, and it was a treat. It was there for a reason. I keep a few in the freezer so that, you know. Anyway, unfortunately I walked away from it and the gas was on a little bit high and it started to smoke and it set off the fire alarm. This is not funny in this house, it's deafening, and the poor cats go into like hyper fear. Anyway, having chatted to the guy next door about the fire alarm when it goes off, because I wanted to know how to shut the thing down, and he said all you can do is waft. Get a tea towel or something and waft it and blow the contaminated air away from the unit and it'll shut up. So I wafted, and while I was wafting I knocked this right off the windowsill. It bounced on the counter and went down to the floor. So it was lucky it made it. It stayed in the pot. So it's had a bit of an accident, but it survived. This mark on this leaf I do not understand. I don't know how long it's been there, and I don't know what it is. It can't be sunburn because these are in a directly north facing window. They don't see any sun, full stop. It's a bright window, but it's not a sunny window. Anyway, as far as the plant's concerned, this one's the only one with a label in it. It says Anthura Amsterdam. Well, Anthura is the nursery it came from, and Amsterdam is a trade name. That's all it is. That particular nursery name all their Phalaenopsis, this is mass-produced stuff obviously, they name them all after cities. So this one's Amsterdam. The only reason it's got a label in is to differentiate it between the other two, which are the same plant. So they've got no names really. Anyway, as far as this plant is concerned, it's got a pretty good root system down in here, and there are some active root tips, and there are some, quite a lot, coming out the bottom. So these are going to be a write-off if I have to repot this again, which I shouldn't have to do for a while. Now in the playlist you'll see that when they were repotted, I think the second time, as an experiment they went into different media. And looking at this one looks like it went into pure cocoa husk. Now, I can't see any signs of bark in there at all, so that's in cocoa husk, pure and simple. So that's that one. It's not grown any new roots for a while, but as it's in flower, I wouldn't expect it to grow anything, but it is actually starting a new leaf. That will be good. So that has a total of 4 leaves, one of which is quite badly split, and it's growing a new one, and there's a bit of root activity but not a lot. So that's that one. Put that one out of the way. Right, now these two were both in the same pot. One was the dominant plant, shall we say, and the other little one wasn't. But it's a clever way of thinking you've got a pot full of plant when in fact you've got 2. Now, so I'm just looking at, now that I've got media on my mind, I can't remember. This one seems to have some chunky bark and some cocoa husk, I'm not sure. Now this one's got a lot of root activity. So what we've got in here are a lot of growing root tips and branching on some of the existing roots. We haven't got any coming out the bottom on this one at the moment, but at the top of the plant we're also growing roots. So we've got one coming out here, another one coming out. They have a habit of doing that. They come out above a leaf and grow along the surface of the leaf. There's not a chance in hell of that root ever getting in the media, so it's going to be an aerial root. This one, however, will go down in the pot, which is far more sensible. Now over this side, most of the roots are down in the pot. This is a new one here. That's heading for the pot, so that's good. And this only has a couple of aerial roots, a couple of spindly ones, so it's not too bad on the aerial root front. It's growing a new leaf, that's pushing on nicely. No sign of any blooming or anything at the moment, but it's in active growth. It's doing roots, it's doing leaves, and that's pretty good. And this one has a total of 7 leaves now. 2, 4, 6. This is its 7th leaf. So that one's not doing quite good. That should have a good bit of strength in it to, once it's finished its growth, it should bloom and it should produce a reasonable spike. It's got the strength, it's got the number of leaves to give it the strength. So that's that one. You'll get pop-ups of blooms if I haven't already done it. Now this one is effectively the same plant. And this one has, it's got an active root in the pot that's trying to get out. Well, that's a bit stupid, but I can't get it back in there, you know. We've got active root tips. There's another one trying to get out. Yeah, so we've got actively growing root tips on this little one. It's got quite a few aerial roots, which are a nuisance, but that one has come back into growth, so it's actually pushing out, that one. Can't get it in the pot though, and that one's got a growing tip on it as well, so that one's moving. And what we've got as far as the plant is concerned is we've got 5 mature leaves and a new one pushing on. So this one again is in active growth. The fact that those two are the same plant, effectively, the same hybrid from the same nursery, out of the same pot, they should grow together. It would be logical that they do the same things at the same time. So both in active growth, not due to bloom, I would suggest, probably until late summer when the spike may start to bloom in the winter. A theory. We shall see. And then this is the one that I ended up coming out of Burnham's with. I will also put a link to the video where we repotted this. The pot was full of algae and the roots weren't too clever, quite honestly. I've kept the label. It hasn't got a name, but I've kept the label to differentiate it from the others. Yeah, so that's the one with the Burnham's tag. You can't. If you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that was a Burnham's tag, would you? There's no mention of it, but down here is the website. And because Burnham's is probably one of the nurseries that's got one of the oldest websites, they managed to get www.orchids.uk.com. They got the one, you know, that doesn't have to be elaborated on to make it unique. So that's why I leave the label in there anyway. Now this one has started some root growth. It didn't have very good roots, it started some root growth. But what we have got here is the fact that it didn't have very good roots at all. We've got a little bit of dehydration. This leaf is not fully hydrated and it may never become fully hydrated now. It's flimsy, it's not firm. This one is, this one is. That one's a little flimsy as well, and that one's not too clever at all. This one will probably drop in the not too distant future. We have also a nice big strong new growth coming out of the top that will go in the pot, or it'll hit the side of the pot and it'll get help to go downwards if it tries to go upwards, but that's the only new root coming from the base of the plant. But what we do have on this one is a spike. So this one's coming back into bloom. So yeah, that's quite good. Notice, certainly in the UK anyway now, plants need a plant passport for import, export sort of purposes. A load of cobblers really. Now strangely enough, I know this went back in the same pot. I cleaned it up to get rid of the algae and everything, put it back in the same pot because it was a suitable pot. Now the pot actually has pink clouds printed on it. So this one may actually have a name. It could still be a trade name. Pink clouds. I like that. That's a nice name for a Phalaenopsis. Right, so those are the potted ones that live on the kitchen windowsill. And then the only other one is my mounted one, which does stay in the grow room. Now this has got some very old manky leaves at the base, which should drop quite soon. These two will. They've gone completely yellow now, but they're very firm. They don't seem to want to let go yet. This one will follow on, could be 6 months later, who knows. Roots are aerial and attached, combination of the two, but at the moment there's very little root activity. That's probably the only active root tip. I can't see any others, they're all older roots. But again, this is not in active growth, it's doing blooming at the moment. And this is Sogo Gotris. It does actually have a proper name, this one. This is the one that's quite amusing because it's probably the only one that's got a tag on it. And it looks like it's got a tag. Oh, that'll be good, I'll be able to remember the name now. No, I won't. It just says pale yellow, pink, and faded words that I can't even read anymore. But anyway, these are lovely, attractive little blooms. Very small. This is a mini Phalaenopsis. It's never going to grow bigger leaves than this. And the latest two leaves are larger than anything on the plant. This is always a good sign that it's now doing as well as it probably can do. It does need some new roots, which it will get in the, well, might not be until after it's finished blooming, which will be a while. These last a long time, and this is the first one. It's only just opened. This one will follow on, and then we've got at least another 3 that will develop, possibly 4, and the spike may extend. It's got the nubbin at the end, which says I may extend when all the other blooms drop off. You can see that just there, the end of my finger. Yeah. So those are my Phalaenopsis. I can't do a care guide for Phalaenopsis simply because, let's turn the camera around. Oh, getting seasick. I'm talking to my chest all the time. I can't do a care guide as such on Phalaenopsis because there are so many different ways of growing these. Basically, they will grow in or on practically anything that's not toxic. So you can't say this is the best media for Phalaenopsis, because to do that you would have to know exactly the environment they were going to be grown in. The only thing I will say is these mass-produced hybrids come from very specific environments that are technologically controlled, basically. I think apart from coming out of the flask and, you know, the seedling stage, they're not touched again by human hands until they get packaged, because they still haven't yet found a way to automate putting that cellophane sheath over the things. So at that point they're given a quality assurance, putting their sheaths and putting the racks and on the trolleys off to the auctions. So you can't really do a care guide, but what I can do is say how these were looked after in the nursery, and it may explain something about why these can go wrong when you buy them and bring them home. They are grown during the daytime at around 27-28 degrees centigrade. They get a 14-hour daylight at a day length, and that light is obviously absolutely perfect for their growth. They can now grow these out of the flask into blooming, I believe, in less than 2 years now. You can't do that, but they can. So that's your daytime temperature and your daytime length, and the light is as they choose to have it. And I would suggest that's probably medium bright for their growth phase. They don't need high light to grow well, and they don't necessarily need light to induce the blooms, because that's not how they do it. Their nighttime temperatures, I believe, go down to about 21, 22, yeah, during their growing phase. They push them on hard. They get fed with, you know, trade industrial type feeds with hormones and all sorts of stuff that we can't get at. You know, evolved over the years to be absolutely dead right for these plants. Yeah, again, we can't do that. It comes in a bottle or a jar or a tin or something. So that's that. Then, when they're the right size and they want those spikes, and they often get 2 instead of 1. This is their first blooming, don't forget, in this environment. They haven't bloomed before. And they may well get 2 really big, huge spikes on these plants. This is pretty good stuff. Again, you have a hell of a job to do it yourself. So what they do then is they drop the daytime temperature and the nighttime temperature, and they just pull it back a phase. I've got a feeling they adjust the light and increase the light level, and it induces the bloom spikes. And those are, again, they change their feed, different type of feed. They push those spikes on hard. As I said, 1 or 2, depending on the particular sort of hybrid. And then, as soon as they get the blooms into the stage they want to be able to sell them, they're out the door like a shot, because they've got thousands and thousands and thousands more coming on behind. It's like a conveyor belt, and in some cases it is a conveyor belt. So that's the conditions for the store-bought type plants. You'll have a job to replicate that in the home. First of all, how many houses are 28 degrees during the day with 14 days good daylight in the place where you've got your Phalaenopsis? So unless you can achieve that, you've failed on count one. Now the nighttime temperature of 21 degrees centigrade-ish, you can probably achieve. The trouble is, it's not a big enough gap between the day and the night, and that's important. So although you might achieve your nighttime temperature as the environment they've come from, it won't work properly unless it has that gap between the day and the night. So, as I said, it's a very precise environment, and that's all they've ever known. And then they get bundled up, put on trolleys, transported to an auction, wheeled around, men shout at them and talk money and stuff. Then they get bundled into another lorry and sent somewhere, probably to a depot, possibly unloaded, possibly loaded again and put in another lorry and sent to whoever's going to try and sell them. And then you buy them and bring them home. How many environmental changes have those poor plants just had? Including winter transport, don't forget. Yeah? It's a shock to their system, and some react pretty badly. You take them home and they finish flowering, they're exhausted, they run out of every bit of energy they've ever had because they haven't had that feed level maintained with those special foods. They've bloomed their heads off, they've had it. They've run out of steam completely, and often they will fail at that point. But then if you only paid a £5 for it in Tesco's, you go and get another one. So, the business model. So there we go, that's my take on Phalaenopsis. At the end you will get an assortment of things to follow on from this, including the repotting of this one, not that long ago, with the poor root system and all the algae and all the muck. That's not a bad one to watch, that's a single video. I will put the playlist as a link. Now, as I said, that's 20 plus videos. I doubt if you're going to watch it all at once. But what I was saying about YouTube and me trying to do as well as I can on YouTube, you could always let it play in the background. It'll probably take about 2 days. Only joking, but you could watch bits of it. Skip one, you know, whatever. Just pick on the bits you like. And I'll probably just leave it at those two, quite honestly. You've had your pop-ups of your blooms. As I said, they weren't specifically chosen for their blooms, but in a way the store-bought ones were, because it was a project to get some orchids growing in the home, specifically so that I can talk about and show some orchids in the home. There's probably more of my viewers grow in the home than don't, apart from when you get to the southern states, obviously, where everybody's growing them in their trees in the garden. Lucky people. But then they get attacked by squirrels and all sorts of things, mucking up their plants and stuff, you know. There's fors and against growing outside. You can get horrendous rain with really heavy humidity and heat and everything. You get everything starts to rot, you know. So the problem being that in their native environment they may get loads and loads of rain and it may be pretty hot. They tend to be in areas where that air is moving up the sides of the mountains and things. You know, they tend to get that airflow. There's some places that are hot and steamy, just as dead, absolutely static, no air movement at all. And that's when the rot sets in. Bump up your calcium. It helps protect against that. Won't stop it, but it can certainly help. Just makes your plant stronger, basically. More resistant as a consequence. So there we go, that's the Sunday chat for the day. The links to the follow-on videos will be coming up at the end. And thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.